Hello and welcome to the Pop Off PC Mag Show. We talk about video games, the industry, trends, our opinions, big games, and sometimes we talk to very special guests, like today. Today I'm joined with Erin Ashley Simon, multimedia host and producer. You can currently catch her on The Download on the Ven. Erin, thanks so much for joining us.
Yeah. Thank you guys so much for having me today.
Cool. So just first for our viewers, just get a little bit of background on you, who you are, what you do exactly.
Oh wow. Shoot, where do I start?
Very small question, just summarize your entire life.
Yeah, pretty much. So I've been doing media work for about 10 years, which is funny to say considering I'm only 28 years old, but I started in the media entertainment industry around 16, 17 years old and worked more in the traditional sports area. And over time, I pretty much tapped so many areas of media, to be honest, whether it's social media, whether it is traditional sports, whether it is music media. At one time I used to work for Diddy. There's so many different areas that I was in, and I just naturally stumbled upon a broadcasting work for esports, and that's kind of the beginning of just everything that's been transpiring since then. And it was one of those moments where it's like, before I did a lot of work behind the scenes, I never really viewed myself on camera. But I was just over time became much more comfortable speaking my thoughts and opinions on camera. And from there, the NBA with their NBA 2K league, they had me host a show. Then I ended up at Cheddar. And then from there, once I signed with CAA, it just kind of took a life of its own. And naturally now it's been interesting because I've kind of taken over this intersection lane of culture and esports and culture and gaming, just naturally, just because my passions lie amongst so many different areas and spaces. And so, now, looking where I'm at now, I'm someone who really talks about those distinct intersections, as well as becoming kind of like a liaison for like major record labels, pro athletes, when it comes to like entering into esports in the gaming space and working with them on initiatives and things like that. And yeah, it's been crazy to think like it's been such a interesting like 10, 11 year journey. And honestly, if you ask me that question, where you want to, or ask me like where do you think you're going to be in 10 years, I probably would not have guessed this, to be honest.
Well, that's all very cool and impressive. Congratulations for signing. Yeah, I remember when you interviewed me at Cheddar, talk about like Link's Awakening or something. I was like, oh yeah, who is this? This person seems very cool. I should know who this person is. We're also the same age. That's also very cool. So you mentioned, esports is a big thing that you cover and talk about. And we are about to transition to a new generation of consoles,
Mm.
PS5, Xbox Series X. And what's interesting about video games to me, because they're so based on technology changes so quickly that like comparing where the games are now compared to the beginning of the last generation, like things have changed in such dramatic ways. And I think that esports have driven a lot of that change in this past generation in particular. Everyone's out there trying to make their own, like, Amazon made Crucible that got canceled, about to have League of Legends on iPhones. So as someone who really like pays attention to that space, what role do you see having kind of going forward, like in this next generation of consoles, or even just kind of bigger than consoles in general?
Honestly, I think it's bigger than consoles. I think the stereotypical console wars concept is kind of over in the traditional sense. I mean, it's very, very clear that Microsoft is selling obviously the Xbox Series X, but that's not its priority. Microsoft is more so focused on their Xbox Game Pass right now. And of course, later on, that transition is going to be naturally into the cloud gaming service, which now obviously Amazon entered into the fold not too long ago. And so that's where things are going. When we looked at and had conversations about the console wars, one of the main driving factors for, what console you wanted to purchase was heavily not just about the technical side or the tech side, but as well as the exclusivities and exclusive titles that were attached to those consoles. Now it's accessibility is the name of the game, not exclusivity. And we're starting to see kind of like that change and shift. I mean, I don't know about you, but I never thought I would see the day where Sony and Microsoft partner up. Like, When I
Yeah,
heard that news, I was like, what?
yeah, they don't care, like, because the third parties don't care. They don't care where you're playing
Yeah.
their game. They're unifying their audiences. I mean, for like esports, that is an especially big deal to have like the largest like unified player base possible. So yeah, I definitely agree that we're like hurtling toward this kind of singularity.
Yeah, and it's interesting too because it's not just so there's different ways in terms of accessibility, right? Accessibility in terms of access to the video games, right? Microsoft is kind of like one of those situations where it's like, okay, great, yeah, get the Xbox Series X, but if you don't want to get it, and let's just say that you want to get the PS5, you could still get the Game Pass and you still have access to Xbox game library, and you just don't have the Xbox Series X. And that's also as a way to entice even PC gamers to get maybe reignited in terms of console gaming again, or maybe there's certain games that they want to play that they know like that they want to play on the Xbox Game Pass versus buying individually via Steam or anything like that. I mean, everyone has their different reasons, I guess is the point that I'm trying to say.
Mhm.
But I think this is great because especially if we're looking at esports, right? Accessibility is not only a big focal point, but it's also a big problem in esports. It's, as we all know, it's very PC driven, but if you look across the landscape of the world in the United States, not everyone has internet, and not even everyone has great internet, and not everyone has the necessary money to buy PCs that add additional attachments to it or items to it in order to make it as best as it can be. And
Oh yeah, we
so
know that at PCMag.com. We know.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, and it's so, but it's interesting too because although we know this, we don't keep it at the forefront when we're talking or discussing or doing things within esports. And so it's interesting because a lot of times when I'm having conversations with people, right? For example, I had a conversation with esports org and they want to get influencers involved in some content. And so they named all these different games that were PC games. And I was like, you do understand that if you're trying to tap into a market like hip hop gamers, right? They're predominantly console gamers because the Black community is very much more console based gamers. And that's
This
because,
segues right into one of the other topics I want to bring up. Is yeah, like
go ahead, go
in
ahead.
terms of yeah, like diversity in gaming and diversity in general is a huge thing to think about. But like in gaming, and
Yeah.
also esports specifically, like yeah, like I was reading something on the Undefeated, and also I was reading an interview that you gave, I think, to ESPN about. I never really thought about it, like, but yeah, this whole console PC divide is totally like a class divide that can impact the kind of demographics that are able to get into to esports.
Yeah. And it impacts too in various ways, right? Because if you have kids who are able to get PCs at a younger age, they'll be more ahead skill wise because they spent so many hours on PC versus if you get them in college, they may be able to, some may be able to adapt quickly, but then you have a whole demographic that has way many hours put in versus a demographic that doesn't. But then that also contributes to the overall conversation of esports when we don't really have solid development, talent development in the esports ecosystem here in the United States. And that's been a conversation that we had in terms of like league. That's a conversation we're having in general, even on the collegiate scene side. So it's just accessibility and technology are some of the two important focal points. Now, the cool thing is we're starting to see like obviously Riot Games is now having their mobile iteration with of League with Wild Rift. That's introducing a game that is PC based to an audience that may not have PC but can start with the mobile version, and then maybe that is going to help to encourage more of a serious approach towards mobile gaming here in the U.S. It's interesting because like overseas, we see such a focus on mobile gaming. We see such a focus on talent development as well as PC gaming. I mean, of course, certain other countries have better internet than we do. But you're seeing that investment into accessibility, talent development, and technological support, you're seeing it impact and seeing players like top players coming from South Korea and
Right.
are
We don't.
capitalizing, doing well in so many different leagues.
Right. We don't have like PC cafe culture in America.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. Also just interesting though too that like other kinds of athletes too, just like the window of time someone can be competitive just
Yeah.
physically, like I remember just people being like, yeah, I'm in like my mid-20s and I just can't click the mouse the same way I used to. Like,
Yeah, it's crazy because it's like you see like traditional sports athletes that are like retiring, like they can retire in their 30s, and then you see esports pros that are retiring, even sometimes young, like even younger than our age, which
yeah,
is
I was
crazy
gonna
to think of.
say,
Like
yeah,
it's like, oh, I'm retired. You're just like, wait, you're 25. How are you retired? But
yeah.
it's just interesting to think that way and in that concept.
So yeah, that was, that demonstrates also the value of having programs to kind of like develop talent, like while they still have potential, right? Like,
Yeah.
yeah. So speaking of accessibility, like not just in terms of people being able to play esports, but also to like just understand the scene. Like, I consider myself a games journalist, but I find myself frequently like just lost about how to even follow this stuff sometimes, and like how to explain it to other people. So yeah, how do you kind of tackle that challenge?
I think the easiest way for me to explain, well, one, I always try to find a space that someone understands. So let's just say this person is a gamer and they're a sports fan. I'll break it down using traditional sports. Now, of course, esports is not entirely the same and have the same format as traditional sports. However, the concept of, you have the overarching theme, which is sports, which can include baseball, basketball, football, right? But the NFL, Major League Baseball, and NBA all have their different rules, their different play, their different style, their different casters, their different terminology. It's the same within the esports scene, right? You have your Call of Duty, you have Dota, you have League. They all are with under the esports umbrella, but they all have their different formats. They all have their different prize pool. They all have their different structures and everything like that. So I try to use an example of what that person may understand. And a lot of times using traditional sports format kind of helps people understand who aren't fully ingrained in this scene.
I think you see that too, with just the kind of the nature of the coverage. Like, it's
Mhm.
very sports style coverage of, yeah, like a lot of focus on hosts and personalities. I guess, yeah. Do you kind of see almost like kind of more like, you're like kind of more focused on personalities and hosting, like when it comes to esports coverage compared to, I guess, other kinds of games journalism.
Yeah. Well, I think that one thing we're gonna see are um different perspectives that broadcasters can bring to the table. I mean, because we already have our established analysts, our established casters, but we're going to see more people who can bring unique perspectives to these broadcasts and unique perspectives to the overall coverage of esports. There's not one lens that we can cover esports, considering now it's intertwining with so many different industries in so many different ways that
Totally, yeah.
there's going to be so many more opportunities. Since mainstream media is also investing in the scene, I'm hoping that there'll be opportunities for that as well. But on the same note, I think that there still needs to be talent development within esports broadcasting and coverage as well. And it doesn't necessarily mean they have to go to college for it, but there are still certain elements and things that it translate into broadcast. Like it's interesting. I've interviewed various different streamers, and it's amazing to see how they're so good on camera streaming, but sometimes they struggle to do like a basic broadcast. And I always try to explain
Interesting.
people it's a similar but different kind of skill sets that you need for broadcast. And so I'm excited. But at the end of the day, in order for us to see so many different angles and perspectives and growth in terms of coverage, we're gonna have to help with developing the talent and helping those who want to work in the scene know where to start.
It's when G4 said they were coming back. It was like you saw all those people being like, I would love to do this. I would love to be a part of this. I would love to, like, yeah, get some like career development for this very specific kind of job of hosting about video games. Um, that was pretty interesting to watch.
Yeah.
Uh, okay, so we're kind of getting toward the end here. But yeah, I also saw you are, maybe this is what you were going to plug, that you are helping to put out a scholarship about esports coverage. Is that correct?
Oh yes, it's not just that, but
Okay.
yeah.
All right.
So
Yes, please correct me.
I'll
Yes.
drop. Well, I mean that's part of it. I'll
Okay.
drop it all, but yeah. So I am part of the Fashion Institute of Technology's esports and gaming program. And with that, or I'm able to give a scholarship out to a selected individual so that they can partake in that program. And this program is cool because it includes a lot of industry vets as well. And so it gives you the essentials. But of course, I've been having more conversations with different universities to do a lot more within this space, especially when it comes to a scholarship perspective. And then also, we probably will be in motion with this by the time this starts or this airs. But I have partnered with 300 Entertainment to do a charity stream to raise funds for historically Black colleges and universities. Their new esports league. It's
Hey,
tied to
awesome.
it's tied to a community as well as Twitch, that specific esports league. So we'll be working with their artists as well as influencers, pro players, and streamers in the scene to bring awareness to the program, to bring awareness to the teams and the captains, but then also raise funds so that they themselves get the appropriate technology and equipment to compete at the highest level on the collegiate scene.
That's extremely cool. I remember when I would cover Black games, and one was like it was like a football game, like a HBCU football game, and people were like,
Yeah.
why don't they make that anymore? So that's very cool. All right, awesome. Erin, thanks so much for joining us. Yeah, like where else can people catch you?
You can find me at Erin A Simon, Erin, the letter A, SIM as in mother, ON as in Nancy. That's for all social media platforms as well as my website, which is erinasimon.com.
Cool. All right. Yeah, so catch Erin. Yeah, again, thanks so much for joining us. This was awesome. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Awesome. Thank you.